This is the first episode of Words of the West. And just a quick background on why I wanted to start this series. As I've talked about many times before, I was a history teacher. I'm a historian. I have multiple history degrees. And why I love history so much is because it's a story. And that's what I would tell my students. You cannot teach history without telling the story. And I love telling a story. I love telling a story. And I do have a flair for the dramatic. So I thought maybe it would be nice if there was somewhere you could go and just hear a story. This was one of my stories based around one of my poems. I would love to read you more poems and tell you the story behind them. I would love to tell you stories from other cowboys. Maybe I'd love to read you stories, famous stories. You tell me. You tell me what would be valuable to you, because at the end of the day, I want this series to be relaxing, to be soothing, to be calming, for it to be something that you can just close your eyes and get transported into the story. So I very much value your feedback, and I would love to hear it. Otherwise, thank you for listening or watching. I don't know what I'm doing on YouTube. So all advice is welcome. Friendly advice, please. I'm soft at heart. This poem is from my second poetry book entitled Words of the West. And that's what this series is going to be called. Words of the West. Because, it's pretty self-explanatory, I think. These are the words of the West. They're my words. They're a culmination of years of the words I've soaked into my skin from horsemen, horsewomen, cowboys, ranchers, farmers, people that live the life that's really romanticized on television, in the movies. That's the words of the West. Like, these are my words that I wrote down on paper. But they come from years and years and years of words that have created a fabric, a tapestry of the West. And so with this series, longer form a little bit, I will see how long these end up being. But one, I just want this to be relaxing for you. I want you to be able to listen. I want you to be able to close your eyes and envision the stories. I want you to be able to smell the sage. I want you to be able to feel the dust settling into the lines on your hands. I want you, after hearing these stories, to go get a drink of water and savor it like you've been in the saddle for 8 hours in rocky country. That's what I want. I just want this to be an experience where, if you've ever lived the cowboy life, if you currently live the cowboy life, if you've always wanted to live the cowboy life and you have no idea where to start, you can lose yourself in these stories. So my idea for this series, and I would love to hear yours, is that I would love to read a poem each time from either my first or second book, Words of the West. And then I want to tell you the story behind this poem. And I want to immerse you in the experience that drove these words to be put onto paper. And this is just me talking to you, my friend on the other side of the screen. These are not scripted, other than reading the poetry off the page and then my thoughts afterward. These are not aesthetic. These are not idyllic. Sometimes these are going to be stories of scrapping and scraping for survival. Sometimes these are going to be stories that maybe leave you on the edge of your seat a little bit. Sometimes these are going to be sadder stories. Sometimes these will be really happy stories. I just want to paint you a picture of the West through these words, because I have been very, very blessed in my life to always live in this country, to grow up on the back of a horse, to never spend a day without the smell of sage, without seeing the way dryland grass ripples in the wind, without smelling pine in the mountains. I just am blessed. So I want to share that with you in this new series called Words of the West. I would love your feedback. I would love your comments. I don't know what I'm doing on YouTube. Let's be very honest about that. I do not do long form content, but I am so appreciative of the positive feedback I get on my poetry. And I know there are people that really enjoy hearing them read aloud. And I thought, let's take it a step further. Let me tell you the story behind the poem. And when I run out of stories, I know a lot of cowboys who have a lot of stories to share, and I will tap them for resources, because if you love the cowboy life, you're going to love these stories. So today's poem is from, again, my book, Words of the West, Volume 2. It's on my website, devinoutwest.com. But I just want to start in the middle. I picked a random poem and a random story because there is a very important story behind each one of these. There's something that drove me to put these words on paper. And this one is called God's Grace. And it's about how sometimes in life you find yourself stuck in a draw at the bottom of a canyon with seemingly no way out. And that's scary. And I've been there, literally and metaphorically. So, if you've ever been in rocky country, down at the bottom of a crag, staring up into the sun, trying to spot a trail to the top, your horse blowing, tired, today is the day you've hit the bottom of his try. And you feel like you're boiling alive, picking your way along a narrow cow path. Dust rises with every hoof fall, sweat runs down your cheek and down his neck. Sheer rock towers on either side like sentinels blocking any chance of escape. There's no water. The creek is dry. Somewhere back a ways, you took a wrong turn, and now you're here. Then, like a quiet, unexpected mercy, you see it. A winding trail climbing the shoulder of the mountain, leading you out of your would-be grave. And as you crest the ridge and feel the breeze, your horse finds his second wind. You find your bearings and settle into the long trot, and this is what it feels like, God's grace, pulling us from the hot, still, lonely draws of life and giving breath back to our lungs when we thought we'd lost it. Where did this poem come from? Well, again, whether you, in another life, years and years ago, lived the cowboy way, maybe you grew up on a ranch, maybe you worked a ranch when you were a teenager or when you were in your 20s, and now you look in the mirror and you see kind of a stranger looking back at you, but you still remember those days. Or maybe you live that life right now. Maybe you're listening right now and you can look out your window and see a skyline filled with buildings. There's nothing wrong with that. But you dream of open spaces and green grass and sagebrush. I just want to immerse you in the experiences that led to these poems. So, if you've ever been in rocky country, if you've ever ridden a horse through some summer country somewhere where cows and their calves have been shipped to roam as far as they can go, to eat, to grow, to basically just become one with the landscape, aside from the cowboys that go out and trot through them once a week, twice a week, aside from the cowboys who bring them mineral and who check water and all of these things. If you haven't been in that kind of country, well, let me set the scene for you. You're on your horse, and you have been tasked with riding through a draw, pretty rocky, to get to the other side and look for cattle down the other side of that mountain. Because when you're gathering, you got to bring all of them in. You can't miss a calf out there. You can't miss a cow. Is it easy to do? Yes, it is. But there are some serious ramifications for that, right? So you've been tasked to go into this draw, and you start at the bottom, and you're riding through, And usually this is in the summer, so usually it's pretty hot. And maybe you packed a water bottle on your saddle, maybe you didn't. Either way, you're hoping the day will be short enough that you guys can have some Mexican food for a late lunch on the way home. And as you ride into the draw, your horse is pretty fresh. And maybe the day's just starting out. So you get into this landscape, if you can envision, following a pretty rocky trail that leads with yucca on each side, with sagebrush on each side, willows down in the creek bottoms, and maybe the creek is dry, maybe it's not. And then as you get further in, the mountains raise on either side of you, and they're sheer rock, or they are peppered with boulders and peppered with shale that would slip out from under your horse's feet. There's no shade down here in the bottom, spare for the random creek bottom tree that you will ride by. And you feel like you're almost in a fishbowl. You're at the bottom of a trench, and the sun is just ruthless and merciless. And as you ride, you look around, and you're looking up either side of the draw for cattle. You would be very surprised where cattle can go. You would be very surprised at how fast they can climb a mountain, and you'd be very surprised where they will choose to take their calf to go graze. And so you're looking for cattle, and you're scanning, and you're trying to keep your wits about you, and you always want to be looking around because you're not the only one out here either. There's rattlesnakes, there's bobcats, there's mountain lions. You're not the only predator in this draw. So you're keeping your head on a swivel. You're paying attention to your horse. He's watching his feet. You're trusting him. He's going to put his feet where he needs to get you safely through here. And you're scanning the sides for cattle. But you know you got to get through this draw and then work your way up the other side. And that's where they'll probably be, is on the other side. However, you keep riding, and somewhere, somehow, you were told that you could spot a cow trail going up the side of this draw. And that's how you get out. Because it's not like you can just turn and ride right up the face of these mountains on either side of you. You got to find the cow trail. And maybe it's not even a cow trail. Maybe it's a coyote trail. And a coyote can go anywhere. Either way, you're riding. You're watching for cows. Your horse is watching where he steps. You're listening for that telltale rattle that means let's clear the vicinity right now. And you're also trying to watch for this cow trail. Well, the day is growing hotter and hotter and hotter, and you've been riding for a while. And you're not on a well-manicured path. You're on a trail barely wider than your horse. And this is why you wear leggings, or some people call them chaps in rough country, because as you ride, you're passing thistles and brush and willows that are snagging on your leggings as you're pushing through them. You're ducking under branches when you come to a tree at the very bottom near a dried up creek, and you're looking for the cow trail. And they're easy to miss. And on this day, it was me and my husband, we missed the cow trail. And so it's a July day. It is hot, and we're working our way through this draw. And it's him in front on his black horse. It's me behind him on my bay horse. And we're pretty quiet because we're focused. And if you have never heard the kind of quiet I'm talking about, where it's just hooves on rocks and the rustle of branches catching on your leggings and a faint squeak of a saddle that's been very well oiled, but will always have that little squeak and nothing else. You're at the bottom of this draw. The world is continuing right up over that ridge. You can't see it. You can't hear it. For all you know, it's not even there anymore. And what a surreal feeling to be down in the earth like that. And so I'm following my husband, and we're going to go get these cows. We know they're up over the ridge, but we got to get to the ridge. And so as we're riding, our horses had started pretty fresh, but they're picking their way through the rocks. And sometimes you come across a boulder and you have to, navigate over that, or, an area where the trail really just disappears and you trust your horse to put his feet where he will to keep you safe. And as we're looking, we get further and further and further in, and we realize we've missed the cow trail. Easy to do. But do we take the chance of turning around, riding back for 30 minutes until we hopefully can find it? We can't turn around and ride back entirely to the rigs. We got to go find these cows. This is our section. This is our quadrant. We have to go find these cows. No, we'll find a different way out of here. There must be another coyote trail. There will be another cow trail. There will be some way to the top, right? It's like if you're trying to cross a stream or a creek and you're looking for that spot that's just narrow enough that maybe you can jump it, or if you're on a horse, it's shallow enough that you can ride a colt through it if you need to. And if you don't find it right away, well, just keep walking. You'll come to it, right? And so we just keep going. We're going to find a way out of this draw. But in the meantime, the sun is baking down on you. And you're wearing a long sleeve shirt because of course you are. Now, probably a straw, not a felt, so there's some saving grace. But the sun is just plastering your shirt to your back, and the horses are already sweating, even though all we're doing is walking along down at the bottom of this trail. And there's no water to be found. If we had water, we finished it, or we didn't bring it with us. And I can hear you now say, why wouldn't you go prepared? Well, hindsight's 2020. But there's also no water for the horses. At the bottom of this draw, everything is dried up. It's July. The ground is baked, and it's that kind of baked earth where it cracks into little squares and rectangles and fun little shapes, and there's these jagged cracks that run across the ground in front of you. And I've always thought, to an ant or something, those must be like little canyons that they could fall into. It's very hot. It's very hot. And you haven't even started your work yet. You're just trying to get to where the cows are. And so I trust my husband explicitly. He finds a cow trail to the top, and up we go. So my horse, Wilson, he's not an old horse by any means, but he is older. He's 14, which, when you're out there climbing mountains, that's getting up there a little bit for a horse. So we're following my husband and his horse, and they start up this cow trail. Now, this is slow going. This is not something you're going to ask your horse to just run up to the top of this hill, this mountain, this ridge, this jagged edge of rocks. We're not going to ask our horses to do that. That could end up really bad, because the potential is always there that as you're climbing this face, your horse slips a foot, goes down, and takes you with him. And you tumble end over end to the bottom of the draw, where there's not exactly a soft landing, but there are a lot of rocks waiting to catch you. And so we keep going up this trail. And as we're going, Wilson starts to labor a little bit. He starts to breathe pretty hard, and he's blowing, and he is sweating, and he's struggling a little bit. And so is my husband's horse in front of us. And now, take note, my husband's horse is what we call a war horse. He's the kind of horse you really can't tire out. You just can't wear that horse out. I can see that horse starting to even build a lather. It's hard work. And so we pull up and we step down. Now, it takes a lot to get a cowboy off his horse. But when the situation calls for it, and when you need to spare your horse a little bit, there is no shame in stepping off your horse and letting them carry on without a load on their back. And so, if you've never stepped off a horse on the side of a rocky mountain, well, that's also not a super easy feat, especially when you're like me and you're 5'3". So I would normally turn my horse so I could step off on the uphill side, and it would be shorter for me. It'd be easier for him. He could keep his balance better. I don't want to turn this horse right now. I don't want to maneuver him too much, because one slip of a foot, one loose rock under him, and we could both be going back down over the edge. So I'm going to step off right where I'm standing. Well, it's a long drop to the bottom. And so I step off this horse, and I don't want to hang on his back too much and, tweak his withers. So I just kind of drop and I hit the ground and I slide down a little bit because it's rocky and there's a loose rock. And I, of course, because why wouldn't you? I twist an ankle. And now we're, as cowboys like to say, we're hoofback. And we are working our way up the side of this mountain. And, our horses, they're not going to run off. They know where they're going. So we're not worried about put the reins up over their neck and let Wilson follow me up this mountain. He can pick his own path. He's not going anywhere, right? He wants to get out just as much as I do. I'm not trying to tug him up the mountain or anything. But we're not quite out of the woods yet, because now we're walking, and we're walking through loose rock, and it is 98 degrees out. And we're in long sleeve shirts, and we're in denim jeans with leather leggings over the top of them. And these boots that I'm wearing during this little hike were not made for walking. And I got my spurs on, and we got, just all your cowboy gear. It's heavy. You're moving around. You're sweating like crazy, and we're just fighting our way to the top. Now, again, we're taking care of our horses here. We don't need them packing us up the side of this mountain. They just need to get up there safe. We need to get up there safe. So I'm following my husband. I'm picking my path behind him because I trust where he puts his feet, but I'm looking down, and I'm kind of limping along because I tweaked my ankle when I stepped off my horse. And as I'm picking my way through the yucca, through the brush, and I'm just terrified to run into a rattlesnake because I have a very serious fear of snakes. My husband, not so much. Me, terrified. And I'm looking down, and I'm watching for snakes, and I'm panting. I'm breathing like a water buffalo. And I look up. My husband's gone that way, and I've gone this way because I wasn't paying attention. And I have put myself into the thick of the bramble bush, of the thorn bushes, of the wood, like the yucca, the sagebrush. He took the path. He found a path and he took it. I wasn't paying attention. I had my head down and I went the other way. And Wilson followed me. So, there's something to be said for loyalty. But oh my goodness, did I make it harder for myself. So I stand there, collect myself for a minute, gather my breath. But I can't stand there for long because my horse is behind me and he's standing at an angle, and that's hard on him. So it's not like we can really stop for a breather. We got to keep going. We got to now make our way back over to the cow trail that my husband found. And we got to fight our way. There's one way through this, and that's through it. We got to fight our way through the brush and the bristles and the thorns and everything. And here we go. And so we're doing it. We're fighting our way. And just behind me, all I can hear is the labored breathing of my horse behind me. And every now and then I hear the glint of metal, a metal shoe on a rock. And I have a fleeting thought for a minute. If that shoe sparks on a rock, this whole valley's going up in flames because it is so dry out here. And what a terrible thought that was. And I am just like desperate at this point to get to the top. I am breathing hard. I'm just so drenched in sweat. My horse is drenched in sweat. And I put my head down because what else are you going to do? What else are you going to do? Stop? Just stand there? Let your horse maybe fall down the mountain because you didn't give him room to find somewhere safe to stop? You got to just keep going. There's metaphors in there for life, but I won't get too philosophical on you right now. Finally, we hit the trail that MD found. And it was like, it might as well have been paved in gold. And we walk down this trail, or up this trail, and we're following this trail, and it's a little bit of a gentler slope. And finally, we crest the top of this ridge, and we hit flat ground. And I am out of breath. I am whipped. and Wilson crests the ridge behind me, and he's got his head down. And these are in shape horses, right? These are very in shape horses, but it was a battle to get up the side of that hill. And we get to the top and we find a flat spot and we just take a break. We just take a break. And the last thing that we're going to do after we've rested, let the horses blow for a minute, meaning they just breathe hard and they kind of get their air back. We pull cinches loose so that they can really get their air back. And then we air out their backs. So that's where you pull your cinch loose and you kind of let it hang, your back cinch, your front cinch, and you lift the saddle pad and the saddle up off the horse's back so airflow can rush in to where the saddle was sitting. And I can't imagine that there is a much better feeling for a sweated up horse than to air out his back. And so we're standing there and we have, the saddles propped up and we're airing out these horses' backs, and my ankle hurts and I have blisters that I know are going to be there for days because these were not hiking boots that I'm wearing. These are my cowboy boots. And I am just dying for a drink of water. I know MD is, I know the horses are. There's no water to be had right now. And what has supposed to have been maybe a 30-minute ride, through this draw and then catch the cow trail and up over the top, turned into well over an hour and a half, 2 hours. We got to go find the cow still. We still have a job to do. But we're not going back the same way we came, I can tell you that. And so, long story short, we let the horses rest, we air out their backs, and then we're back on and we're moving, because the sooner we can go find these cows, the sooner we can get back to a stock well or stock tank or a spring or something, water the horses. That's the first priority. And then back to the pickups and water ourselves. And I can't wait for that. The sun, again, is ruthless. It felt hotter at the bottom of the draw because we didn't have a breeze. At least up here, there's a breeze that's drying the sweat on you, and you're back in the saddle and you're moving forward, and we go find the cows, and then we don't go back down that draw on the way home, but we still have quite a ways to push them before we hit the pins. So we push them through some rough country, and it was a day that challenged my fortitude. It was a day that challenged my horse's fortitude. It was a day that really made me grateful to get a drink of water. It was a day that showed me what resiliency looks like. Because you had to just keep going. You had to just keep climbing. There was no stopping. And it was a day where at the end of it, I thought, wow, I have been in some deep valleys like that. I've been in some draws of life, metaphorically speaking, and God's pulled me out of them. And to be in that physical draw and then finally hit the top of that ridge and feel a cool breeze hit your face and dry the sweat on your back was unexplainable, an unexplainable feeling. And so at the end of the day, hours later, we get back to the pens, watered the horses on the way back. We stopped at a tank for them, and I hunt up a water bottle in the pickup, and it was lukewarm and probably full of microplastics, and we drank so much water. We had stomach aches afterward, but never tasted anything so sweet as that. So that's my story behind this poem, God's Grace, about being trapped in the bottom of a draw in rocky country and trying to find your way to the top through a little cow path. And if you've ever been cowboy, and if you've ever lived on a ranch or pushed cows or whatever, especially up in the mountains, you probably have a similar story, or more than one, about being down in the draw, looking up into the bright, blazing sky, and just wondering, how are we going to get out of here? And when you finally do get out of there, that's going to be the best tasting water you have ever drank. So that's my poem for today. That's my story behind the poem. This has been Words of the West, episode 1. Getting stuck down at the bottom of a crag, of a draw, of a valley. That'll teach you something. And it'll make you very appreciative for cell phone service.